Hey everybody, it's Mike again. I'm here to talk to you guys about the day one patch, or why I hate video games. Let me preface this with an obvious disclaimer. I really do love video games. I love the industry. I love making games. But with that out of the way, I just want to talk about kind of how the internet has destroyed games as we know them today. I know that it sounds like I'm the old man shaking his fist at the screen, but just hear me out on this one. When I began my career as a game developer, what we packaged up and sent out the door got burned onto physical media, physical discs, cartridges, whatever. Whether you're working with Nintendo on the janky little GameCube, or you're working with Sony on a PlayStation 3, or that little upstart Microsoft with their nasty little Xbox, it didn't matter. It was a done deal. Once something was done and put out there, there was no fixing things unless you really messed up. After, along comes all these online services. You start seeing some shenanigans in the way that things are built. And by the time the PS4 and Xbox 360 come around, the dreaded letters DLC are now part of every gamer's vocabulary. At the beginning, we as developers took a beating over that. Things like the dreaded horse armor in RPGs, or charging for songs in, Guitar Hero or Rock Band. The worst offenders of all was the DLC that just happened to ship on the disc. People went nuts. You would basically paywall the ability to play the whole game, right? And we were doing that to cheat you out of a further 10, maybe even $20 at the time. Everybody would just yell bullshit, right? And you know what? I agree. I worked on games where we would design this cohesive product. Everything is all great, start to finish. And then you would get a call from marketing or sales or some design department, and they would be like, okay, we need 20%, 25% of that content shaved off to become DLC. So yeah, back in the day, instead of designing additional content or post-ship content, they would just carve off some of the game and lock it behind a paywall on the disc that you bought. I hated that stuff. On top of that, the Wii, the royal we of the games industry, started to get a bit sloppy and a bit lazy. At that point, when we realized that we could fix things later, we were starting to get even worse, and we would write the checks that our ass couldn't cash ever. Producers and designers would make these grandiose promises, things that we could never hope to achieve within our little tiny time frames. And rather than cutting content out due to time limitations, they would just decide, you know what, we'll add it later. We'll add it after ship. And at the time, we freaked out going, post-ship content? Are you guys crazy? That might sound good to you as a player, right? But for us, it was a little bit more of a downside. Marketing and sales ate that stuff up, but for us, it meant never stopping working on a game. Some people are like, oh, cool, keep working, job security. But the reality is, you get things coming out like Cyberpunk 2077 shipping 6 months before the game was actually really done. The dev teams there were amazing, but they got hung out to dry for the sins of the publishers and for the sort of greed of the shareholders. There's nothing that can be done for that. You have to start making a little bit more realistic plans and realistic promises and roadmaps. Now, we as developers, we tend to ship games that aren't finished anymore. You are all effectively beta testers. You're paying all of us to have the privilege of unfinished, buggy software. You could spend $1,000 to buy your PS5 and an extra controller and a game and get it all hooked up. That hardware tends to run unoptimized code and art because we can't afford the time to finish products in this market. The only teams that can really get away with making really great cohesive software at this point are those first-party titles, the big Sony, exclusives, or the big Microsoft exclusives, or the big Nintendo exclusives. They're the only ones that get the proper time and support to make these crazy good games. If you've just built yourself, one of these god-tier gaming PCs, you'll have mixed results, right? A portion of the port of Horizon Zero Dawn runs kind of like dog poo at launch. Cyberpunk your top tier PC might struggle to get 100 frames per second, whereas you could play another large open game and cap out, cranking hundreds of frames on the same machine. I am that cranky old games industry guy, but I think that we as industry, we as designers, we as programmers, we as artists can and should do better. The problem is the market, the games market, the stock market, even retailers in the short term until they're left by the wayside. But I think that's a topic for another video. Now, thanks again to anybody who tunes into these videos. I know that these are a little bit further apart than they should be, but I really would like you guys to comment down below and let me know, what do you love about the industry? What do you hate about the industry? Are games coming out and you're fine with how they're built? So give us a like, hit subscribe, do all that cool stuff, comment below, share with your friends. And like I said, I might get busy sometimes, but I will do everything I can to reply to your comments down below. Stay safe. Happy gaming, everybody.